let's do the converse now and talk to a former U.S. ambassador to this country, David Cohen. He was Joe Biden's ambassador here in Ottawa for a number of years until just a few months ago. Mr. Cohen, it's a pleasure. Ambassador Cohen, a pleasure to see you again, as always. I wanted to start off with the big picture with you, this sort of idea of Donald Trump standing in the Rose Garden talking. I know in Canada we're all saying, oh, wow, we escaped this one round. But my goodness, every other country, and as our last guest pointed out, China and the European Union, like those are not small tariffs at all. Your impression that you could convey to us about how this is going over in the United States and the wider impact of this announcement?
Well, as I was thinking about what I was going to say before coming on here, before the announcement, one of the things I was going to say was that everybody should be a little cautious. This is complicated stuff, and it's going to take a while to sort out exactly what's going on. And listening to your newscast, you and your guests have been doing exactly that, which I think is important because it's going to take a while to figure out what's happening here, but the Rose Garden announcement, the charts that are prepared, Donald Trump has a vision to remake the international global trade order in a way that has never been done before. And you've heard me say in the months leading up to this that Canada shouldn't be too defensive. Yep, they're a target of President Trump, but he's got a much broader target, and that in fact the issues of trade and of security and of defense go way beyond Canada and Mexico. And I think that's what you saw in this announcement, the ambition of President Trump to remake the trade order in a way that he believes will benefit the United States. Sorting through whether that's the case is going to take time. I heard one economist this morning say that if you were to line up 1,000 smartest economists in the world and ask them their opinion on what a broad-based tariff increase would do, whether it be good or bad for the United States economy and for the economy, 998 of them would say that it would result in an increase in prices, increase in inflation, lower economic growth, and that those are the only certain results of across-the-board tariff increases. But there are economists who have a different opinion, and certainly Donald Trump has a different opinion, and it's going to take a while to sort through that. In terms of the reactions in the United States, I've been really waiting to go on the air with you, listening to the announcement like everyone else has. I haven't heard many announcements. I can give you objective data, which is that in the first hour of Donald Trump's speech, the Standard & Poor's futures dropped 2.2%. So initial reaction, the stock market isn't open. I think it's not accidental that this announcement was scheduled for after the closing of the stock market. But when you look at the futures of the stock market, the initial reaction of the United States, this announcement is not positive.
Let me follow up with you on that, because you mentioned the 998 economists. My gut tells me that Donald Trump doesn't care what those economists say, but he might care if Americans writ large start to find their life inordinately more expensive. Right. Do you have a sense that will ultimately exert some pressure or some pushback on the imperative that he has spelled out today, and the sort of reasoning he is outlining for these tariffs, the rationale, as you put it?
I think that is the only thing that will result in moderation of President Trump's ambition. And it's not just the stock market. It is not just grassroots. It is when senators and congressmen go back to their districts. We've already seen multiple canceled town hall meetings. It's the pressure that they feel, which when they come back to Washington is pressure that they will put on the White House and on the president. And if in fact those economists are right, and we're going to see fairly quickly increases in price in prices, and it's increases in prices on things people care about: groceries, automobiles,
Right.
housing. I mean, this is what motivates people. Inflation, if there's one thing Donald Trump knows, it is that the American voting public is scared of inflation and hates inflation and votes on increased inflation because arguably Donald Trump got elected on that emotion, on the fear and the dislike of the American voting public for inflation. And if the short run results over the next few weeks, over the next few months, are increases in prices, increases in inflation, continued reductions in the stock market, which, remember, the stock market is not just for rich people. People's retirement accounts and their 401ks are disproportionately in the stock markets. And if people see their retirement accounts dropping, the amount they'll be paid on retirement dropping, if they see the prices they're paying in the supermarkets going up, and if important industries to the United States and to the president, like agriculture, see greater problems as a result of a trade war, that is the type of activity that will create pressure for at least moderation of these incredible global trade ambitions that the president clearly has.
Ambassador Cohen, I'll leave it on that note. I appreciate your analysis tonight. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me on. And my last word of advice, I gave two pieces of advice. One is to Canada, which is the reactions I heard from Premier Ford, reactions I heard from you are the right reactions. Take a breath. Let's figure out what's going on here. I'll give you another concrete piece of advice, which I've given, which is Canada's talked about, has talked about retaliatory tariffs in reaction to what Donald Trump is doing. Now, there may not be the need for any of those, depending on what we learn has actually been done. But take a page from Donald Trump's playbook, which is don't call them retaliatory tariffs. They're not retaliatory tariffs. That sounds like it sounds like a personal agenda. They're reciprocal tariffs. I mean, Donald Trump is a great communicator. So these 40 countries that are on that chart that have these generous reciprocal tariffs of about half of what they're charging the United States, those aren't retaliatory. They are reciprocal to make up for what those countries are doing to the United States.